This is a debate between Destiny and Alex Jones and a number of other people on the right. It's a debate on like Hunter Biden and China and all the other crazy stuff that they talk about. Anyway, FYI, before we watch, I just want to say, like, with Destiny, I'm not the biggest fan. He's done some things that have been questionable, and he reacts badly when there's a crowd of people that are opposed to him, which I understand. It's not easy to deal with a hate mob for any reason, whether it's legitimate or not. But he said things I don't like. That's all I'm going to say about it. So I don't stand behind Destiny or some of the things that he said, but he does know how to do some top-tier debate prep at the very least. So let's give this a listen, see what they have to say, and while we do, we're going to play some Breath of the Wild 2. I'm just kind of running around doing whatever, so if you never played it, shouldn't bother you too much. It'll be in the background. All right, let's listen to this, shall we?
I'm excited to have an actual attorney sitting next to us who knows he's a free speech lawyer. I mean, we need to. Have you noticed any total BS that has come out on stage so far, Adam?
Well, I guess yes is the answer. Although I'm still trying to get my mind around the idea of inviting a lawyer to a comedy club. But okay, I'll go with that. But yeah, there's been I think, as law professors would pompously say, much confusion in some of the areas of the law, and maybe we talk about it.
So what specifically?
Well, let's start with the Twitter files. So Twitter is a private company. It can do as it wishes. But when it acts at the behest of government, as the Supreme Court... Exactly. And when it acts at the behest of government, when it does, as the Supreme Court says, government cannot do through a private individual what it cannot do itself. And
Agreed, yes. I completely agree with that. I don't know whose side this guy is on, left or right, but Donald Trump famously asked Twitter basically to remove somebody that he didn't like. That is, in my mind, a clear example of government censorship. Whether it was actually the government doing the censoring or not, they requested it. The common claim on the right, the only reason anyone even talks about the Twitter files is because the right claims that Joe Biden was like in the White House or whatever and requested it. That's simply not true. Joe Biden was not in the White House yet when the Twitter files were released. So anyway, it's just absurd. I'm sorry, they may have been released, but when the time range that the Twitter files covered at the very least, it's just absurd on every level, and there's no logic to be found here. They don't care about logic. When I say they, I'm talking about the far right who talk about the Twitter files. It's absurd.
And that's what we're having. The idea that that the government just goes to Twitter and says, oh, by the way, would you mind banning this? And they look at it like that request, like it came from you. That's not what's happening. The Twitter files show that almost half of the government requests for censorship result in action by Twitter. That's not a private entity.
Twitter enforcing their code of conduct, whether the request to enforce the code of conduct came from government or not, is not censorship. They're allowed to enforce their code of conduct. Government can sit there all day and point out things that violate their terms of service, and it's not censorship. So again, I don't know whose side this guy is on or what, but sure, I suppose I agree with him on technicality. I think I disagree with him on his interpretation of what the Twitter files were. I'm not even sure. I can't tell yet. Quick note before we continue, I'm writing a book about my experiences inside the religion of Jehovah's Witnesses. I cover the culture and doctrine. It's understandable even if you know literally nothing about the religion, so I'd appreciate if you gave it a read. To find out more, go to owenmorgan.com/book. All links are in the description, of course. Okay, back to the video.
That's government censorship, and I think that's obvious. And that's not just me. In fact...
yeah, he's just misinterpreting what the Twitter files were. Seems to have a fine understanding of the law, as far as I can tell. Everything legal that he said sounds like what my wife talks about, with her law classes and everything. It's just the shared information that he and I have about Twitter is wrong.
A federal court in the state of Louisiana in a lawsuit by the state of Louisiana and Missouri alleging that Twitter was a state actor has pretty much said that they made the prima facie case and is allowing the question to go to trial. So,
Okay, I don't know what Louisiana is up to, but if they're basing it on the Twitter files, they're wrong. They're simply wrong.
Whether it is...
Oh, yeah, and by the way, something going to trial doesn't mean something has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt. It means it's going to trial.
And is allowing the question to go to trial. So, whether it is true, we will find out. But the fact that it's dismissible or absurd is wrong. I mean, it's legally wrong.
No, it's not. Twitter was simply enforcing its terms of service more often than not. Now, Donald Trump requested Twitter take down a message from Chrissy Teigen, John Legend's wife, I think, because she called him insults. Twitter was doing everything that they could to, work around their existing terms of service to try to make that ban happen or make the removal happen within their terms of service on Donald Trump's behalf, which is bad. It's wrong. That would be government censorship. But, for example, Joe Biden requesting that they take down revenge porn of his son, he wasn't even a government actor at the time. That's not a violation of, government or censorship, government interference with private companies, whatever. That's not what was happening there. And that's what the Twitter files are based on. That's the whole premise. It's all about what Joe Biden did. No one ever talks about the fact that Donald Trump tried to get them to ban Chrissy Teigen or remove her tweet or whatever, bizarrely.
Okay, so it's not dismissible and it's not absurd. The question is it happening? That's, I think, what we want to demonstrate, and I think that's what the Twitter files have over and over again failed to demonstrate, is the government making, not just any request, but is the government making an inappropriate request to censor something off of Twitter that it shouldn't be doing? And
Right. The problem is the Twitter files, not his understanding of the law.
don't believe that was ever demonstrated. You can't just say that every request for censorship is illegal. For instance, I'm sure you would agree, if the government were to bring to Twitter's attention illegal activity that's happening on Twitter, they are fully within their rights to make that request, and Twitter is fully within their rights to take that content down should they deem necessary.
Yes, but this whole thing reminds me of the story of Henry Plantagenet, Henry II, and Thomas Becket, if anyone remembers it.
Men for all seasons.
Yeah, that's right. No, actually, it's a few generation before, but close enough. It's Murder in the Cathedral. Any case, yeah, okay, yeah. Henry II was surrounded by his highly armed barons, and he got an argument with Thomas Becket, and he said, "Will no one rid me of this turbulent priest?" Knowing that his highly armed barons were all around there, and what did the barons do? It's like, well, this is a government request. Let's march down to Canterbury and assassinate Thomas Becket. Now, was it government speech when Henry II said, "Will no one rid me of this turbulent priest"?
Okay, a long story just to get to the question of if government suggests something and that suggestion is followed by private companies, is that government censorship? In spirit, yeah. By the letter of the law, maybe, but I'd say probably not. That's not what's happening in the Twitter files anyways. What are you talking about? What does this have to do with the Twitter files? It's completely unconnected and irrelevant. Quick interjection, this won't take long. If you like what I do, it would be awesome if you guys checked out my Patreon. All links are in the description, of course. Okay, back to the video.
Of course it was. And similarly, I worked in D.C. I was Assistant Secretary of Commerce for the National Telecommunications.
Okay, yeah, just pump up your resume there and convince us you're right just based on your credibility rather than your argument itself. Great.
Information Authority. I could see how pressure is brought by government to get certain actions done in the private sector, and we have to be blind not to see that.
Sure, but
No, I agree.
So if we have to be blind not to see it, it should be easy to point it out. So for instance, Twitter adhered to, I believe it was less than 40% of the requests that the government made for accounts getting taken down. For the ones that they didn't follow through on, was there repercussion for it? Were they actually being pressured? Did any of the internal emails make Twitter seem like they were worried about what the response would be from the government if they didn't follow through on any of those requests? Because
I don't think that's relevant. Government can make requests whether the requests are honored or not. It's still government censorship. It's government attempting to do something, but Joe Biden was not part of government at the time. Donald Trump was part of the government.
Because I didn't see a single instance of any of this. Was there?
Well, there are two responses. First of all, government doesn't have to give you a specific threat to make you feel afraid of it. I mean,
I agree.
As Ronald Reagan says, what's the most scary sentence you can ever hear? I'm from the government. I'm here to help. So, I mean, I think the idea that you have to say,
that's a stupid sentence or a stupid saying. Ronald Reagan was probably handed that statement by lobbyists. Ronald Reagan was the culmination of rich lobbyists finally getting a stranglehold on Washington. He was the end result of that, and it's just straight up wrong. Anyways, he was a terrible scumbag, Reagan was. Aside from all of that, I do agree with the guy that the threat doesn't have to be explicit. It doesn't even have to be implicit. If the government is asking somebody to do something, whether there's a threat of consequence for them or not, it's still, in my mind at least, government censorship. That's just not what happened, is all.
Twitter was going, the government was going to go and, imprison Jack Dorsey or make him take out his nose earring if he didn't censor these people. That's not the way it works. I mean, the way it works is I think generalized threats are good enough. And the point is, the way the government works,
But were there threats is the question. I didn't see any of that. Right, so that would, what I think is significant is that the government...
It's not significant. I don't know why they're going down this route. From somebody who it doesn't have a background in law, but watches somebody who has a background in law a lot. This is completely irrelevant. It does not matter at all. Whether there's a threat or not, open or not, is irrelevant. Government can still request something of somebody, and that person can feel pressure to do that, to act. It's still government censorship, if it happens. But this stuff wasn't happening. I mean, Donald Trump did request Chrissy Teigen's tweet to be taken down. That was an example of government censorship. Joe Biden wasn't even in government for the time frame the Twitter files were out.
Twitter didn't follow the rules it didn't think it needed to, or at least didn't agree with. So it still had that freedom. But
that's true.
The question is, did government actually make a threat, right? So if there's a law enforcement issue, you can see how they'd come in and say, hey, there might be some false information that could lead to people getting killed. Who knows? Maybe this minority over here.
Well, if it's law enforcement making the request, just like a normal government agency, an arm of the government or whatever, then I don't think that it's censorship anymore. But when it's coming directly from the president, that's a different situation. People want to make the president happy, especially when he's got a proven track record of being psychotic toward the people that he doesn't like.
Here's thinking about what they do with the Rohingya. I think there was some examples on Facebook. But I don't think the government you couldn't point to probably any threats, could you? Am I wrong about that?
Well, I mean, I think you could. I mean, when I talk to industry in that position, I mean, think of all the things the government can do to these companies. They can change their preferred tax status. They can change their Section 230 special status.
You would never. Okay, what arm of the government are we talking about? Donald Trump? Yes, Donald Trump has directly talked about doing that stuff. An arm of law enforcement? Nah. Law enforcement, if there's a police office or something, that wants this change done or wants Apple to open up, like, you know, somebody's iPhone, like the San Bernardino shooter forever ago. I don't know if you guys remember that. Apple was asked to open up his phone, and they refused. And there were no perceived repercussions for them refusing because it was just a police unit or whatever who was asking. They don't have any power to enforce their interests against Apple. But Trump asking? That's different.
They can.
Or you know what? Even Biden asking, as long as the requests are within the terms of service and not completely unusual and unfounded. And as long as, I'll just leave it at that. As long as there's no threat of violence or no threat of retaliation, as long as there's no threat of retaliation and government is only making requests that are within their terms of service, I don't have a problem with it at all.
What's that?
But
Yeah,
they
a little bit.
But they didn't do any of that, though,
Well,
right?
actually, they threatened to at times, and
I couldn't understand what he said.
Well, yeah, but the Section 230 threats all come from Republicans.
Section 230. Yeah, they did threaten to remove Section 230, and that's 100% true. They all did come from Republicans. It was Trump leading the charge on that one.
no, Biden often talks about how we need to clean up the internet, and they have to do more. It's a
Okay, that has nothing to do with Section 230. What are you talking about? This guy must know he's being intellectually dishonest, right? There's no way he doesn't know that.
constant refrain from the Democrats is that
Having to do more. Hold
Now, I don't even know what he's talking about. When did Biden say we have to do more? I mean, I'm trying to think. Like, I guess the general sentiment from the Democrats is that social media is a cesspool. But I don't know of any specific examples where they said we need to do more. We have to regulate, or we have to, like, force Twitter or Facebook or whatever to do this or that. When has like the Democratic Party ever crossed that line? I don't. Does anybody remember that?
on. Having to do more to clean up the internet is far different than threatening Section 230, which I've heard
Which Trump did, yes.
repeated multiple times by multiple Republican lawmakers. I believe Trump himself has talked about Section 230. That is a huge.
He talked about Section 230 nonstop. That was his thing. That's what he wanted to do. That was his threat against social media for not following his instructions. Yeah, that was an explicit threat by a government actor that would, that would be employed if this company didn't do what this government actor instructed them to do.
Huge conservative talking point. I think Jack over here has probably even talked about Section 230. That's definitely a conservative talking point.
It is, but the Democrats talk about it just as much, and they often talk about,
No, they don't. What are you talking about? Cite one example. This dude is just completely talking out of his ass. This is made up. Democrats do not talk about Section 230 literally ever. I've been watching this closely because I don't want Section 230 removed. That would make a huge mess for me. Democrats have literally never, no Democrat ever said that we should remove Section 230. No Democratic lawmaker, no public figure, no politician of any sort on the Democratic side has ever said that.
Imposing all sorts of hates, and they have hate, as they have in California, as they have in New York, hate speech crimes, hate speech laws against social media companies.
Wait.
No. What are you talking about? No one has even talked about instituting hate speech laws to force social media companies to ban certain people if they use certain words. That is completely made up, once again. This fabricated outrage by Republicans. Democrats are not doing that.
Wait, there are hate speech laws in the United States of America?
Yeah.
No. And this guy is a lawyer. Okay, he should know this. This is absurd.
One was just declared unconstitutional in New York State, and one is...
So they're trying to pass them, but there are, my understanding...
They are passed.
So you're telling me that if I go to
He just said it was declared unconstitutional. So it's not part of law.
a New York or some
And besides that, I'm sorry, man. I'm just rejecting this entirely. I don't believe you. I don't even know what he's talking about. I feel like you got to look up everything that these people say, every word.
I don't mind understanding.
They are passed.
So
No, they're not passed. These hate speech laws, I don't even know which ones he's talking about. I don't trust that this is real, that this has ever really happened, first. And second, until they're actually, like, ratified and put into effect and people are affected by them, I'm sorry. I don't care. I don't believe you, and it's irrelevant.
so you're telling me that if I go to a New York or some state and I tweet out like a racial slur, I can actually get criminal action against me?
No, the way the statute worked is that it required the platforms to keep track of hate speech, whatever that means, didn't really define it, and create
Okay, well, it would have had to have been defined. And also, it never happened. It's just completely made up.
lists of people who are producing hateful speech and have that available and disclose it. So essentially it was sort of a forced auto-doxing by these platforms. And that's what the
Nonsense. This did not happen.
Democrats do. And so, you can't sort of say, the Democrats aren't going to hurt the social media companies. They do, and they have.
These are the ones.
Well, yeah, they do and they have. Absolutely. No one is saying that they won't hurt social media companies. Donald Trump threatened that nonstop throughout his tenure or whatever. But in an ideal world, we wouldn't do that. And I have not heard a single Democratic politician advocate for anything approximating government censorship, not even close, ever.
If I remember correctly, it's California and New York, and then Mines, and I think Tim Pool actually has Luke's
And Babylon B. Yeah, we just sued the state of California.
Right.
Because
are actually in the lawsuit on this law, right?
Exactly.
It's the path towards direct hate speech laws. They're basically requiring social media companies to have specific policies about these clearly charged topics: misinformation, disinformation, hate speech, extremism, and radicalization.
They're requiring them to have policies about it. I haven't heard anything about this, and I probably follow this subject closer than just about anybody you would know, because this affects me personally directly. I don't know what they're talking about. Maybe this is happening. Maybe so. It's certainly not happening the way they're representing it, and it's certainly not being, like, led by Democrats in an effort to censor social media and use social media companies to their advantage or whatever. It's just made up.
None of them are actually defined, and this is currently passed in California. So
I don't know what he's talking about.
it's a step in the direction of actually getting fined for hate speech.
So returning to the original part for Twitter, okay? So
Okay, I have to look this up now. California hate speech law. Governor Gavin Newsom today announced that he signed a first-of-its-kind social media transparency measure to protect Californians from hate and disinformation spread online. AB 587 by Assembly Member Jesse Gabriel will require social media companies to publicly post their policies regarding hate speech, disinformation, harassment, and extremism on their platforms and report data on their enforcement of the policies. Okay, great. I don't see a problem with that. Yes, YouTube was shadow banning people for the longest time because we didn't know what their policies were. Absolutely, I love it. Post it publicly. Tell us what is going on. California will not stand by as social media is weaponized to spread hate and disinformation that threaten our communities and foundational values as a country. Californians deserve to know how these platforms are impacting our public discourse, and this action brings much-needed transparency and accountability to the policies that shape the social media content we consume every day. It's just a bill designed to create more transparency about their hate speech, about their policies. It's not telling them that they must have this instituted or whatever. They must blah, blah, blah. It's saying they must have it listed on their website what their enforcement policies are. Very different.
A lot of times we say things like it's nuanced, it's complicated. However, you're a lawyer, so I want you to break this down for us. I really want to know, when you talk about how there's this idea of a generalized threat from the government to Twitter that was prompting Twitter to act, why did we not see any of that in the emails? No concern for lack of ability to act on a government request. Why did we not see any type of even implicit repercussion for Twitter not following through on banning accounts that the government would highlight as problematic?
Well,
That's true, but I personally don't believe that the threat needs to be there for it to be government censorship. It can be an overarching threat, like Donald Trump is advocating for this bill, and then the White House requests this thing from Twitter, and they know that if they don't do this, then there's a possibility that he might blah, blah, blah. And it may be way, way, way down the line even. Like, I don't know. Or hell, maybe there just is no implied threat at all, and the government is simply asking them to do something illegal consistently, and they do have the power to enact retribution against them. Then I'd have a problem with it.
Highlight as problematic.
Well, that's not true at all, though. You do see that in the Twitter files.
Where?
You see that
Yeah, where?
in the people who are responding to Yoel Roth that are currently working for the Biden administration.
This is one of the little tricks people play all the time. When on the right, when they're talking about this stuff, they will list some, subsection of law, or they'll list some area of an email or something that we can't check right now, that we can't fact check them on. And that's fine, because they'll just get away with it. They will assume that that was a win. Everyone assumes that it was a win for this person, even if it wasn't. That's really frustrating to me when that kind of thing happens.
In the NSC, and the other one, she's, I think Buttigieg's like policy advisor at Secretary of Transportation, specifically when they were talking about things like the Hamilton 68 files, when they were saying...
Okay, so he said, Buttigieg, Hamilton 68 files... Okay, this is all from Fox News and stuff. I don't want Fox News. I want, anything else. Reuters, AP News, or just the literal files. I'll take whatever. I don't want, news, New York Post. I feel like he's not giving us enough information to work off of here to prove him right or wrong.
Specifically when they were talking about things like the Hamilton 68 files, when they were saying... When Yoel Roth was saying, look, this Hamilton 68, to your point, was saying that this was just a bunch of BS. We don't think these are Russian actors. We think these are just conservatives. But there were people internally at Twitter saying that so Yoel Roth wanted to put out a statement pushing back on the Hamilton 68. This is in that, tranche, you could say, I guess. And there were people...
I love that word.
People at Twitter that were saying we need to think of the bigger picture. They were making statements like we need to be careful how we go back with this. They were worried about pushing back.
I think they were. And also, if I could just interrupt here, government action is.
No, I'm sorry. I just have to respond. I don't believe him. I don't know what he's talking about. I feel like we didn't get enough information from him to prove or disprove what he's saying. I feel like what he said was just trying to cite a single example, but it was really just citing a set of emails that is screamed about by Fox News and seemingly nobody else. Just right-wing news networks talk about this nonstop, apparently. I need more than that. I need some kind of evidence outside of that. Anything, anywhere. I couldn't even find the emails. I'll take the emails even.
Is not shown not simply by threats, but as the courts of appeals have said, coordinated action. And I think that gets to Jack's point. We have a situation where those social media companies, they are filled with personnel who do this revolving door between the social media companies and the security states, or in those weird nonprofit organizations that play this weird intermediate role. And so,
I understand that debates are good. Sometimes, a lot of the time, I understand that it's valuable to people to listen to debates and stuff, and it's interesting too. Aside from being valuable, it's interesting. I get that, but I feel like these guys are just just going off about the most ridiculous nonsense with absolutely no basis in fact whatsoever. They're not even trying to be factual. They're just spouting off whatever. And there's a question here as to whether or not it's ethical to platform them. I mean, not for me, because I'm not giving them coverage, extra coverage that they wouldn't have otherwise. Like, you know, my audience is smaller than theirs. So I think it's fine for me to talk about them. But for this conference to host extremists who are talking nonsense like this, I'm not so sure that this conference is not being ethical in how they platform to people, I don't think. Hey, maybe this platform, maybe this conference was a far-right, insane conference. It looks like it because they're sponsored by Public Square. If you guys were here yesterday, then you'll know that Public Square is something that Donald Trump Jr. talks about constantly.
You know, Public Square has been a great...
Oh, that's mention number 2. Can we fit a third one in before he goes?
sign up. Don't just take the easy button of, well, I'm on Amazon, so I'm going to hit a button one time and I'll just order it that way because, you know, something else takes 3 seconds. You know, on Public Square, you now have, they're growing these platforms, but we need everyone.
Mention number 3, Public Square.
Thank you, Don Winnington Publishing. We're talking about go get the mtgbook.com. Thank you, sir. God bless you and your family, and we'll be praying for you all this year.
Have a good one, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you notice, there isn't a 4th mention. Anybody catch on to that? He said Public Square a total of 3 times. He's most definitely being paid for that endorsement, right? I feel like that kind of seals it. I mean, we'll never know for sure, even though he's supposed to disclose that. Legally, he could get in a lot of trouble for not telling anybody that he has this person as a sponsor or whatever. I just about guarantee that they're working together. This conference is not being ethical in how they platform to people, I don't think. Hey, maybe this platform, maybe this conference was a far-right, insane conference. It looks like it because they're sponsored by Public Square. Public Square is something that Donald Trump Jr. talks about constantly. Yes, I suspect that Public Square might be something that paid Donald Trump Jr. for an endorsement, but I don't know that for sure.
They are coordinating this action, and yeah, I mean, if I were an aspiring member of this like weird group that's, you know, censoring the internet, I wouldn't put it in an email. They're smart enough not to know.
Okay, and I love that you said that. So then we agree the Twitter file showed nothing because it wouldn't have shown up in an email then. But that's a
I love it.
markedly different statement than the Twitter file showed us that the censorship existed.
No, that's not true. I mean, something can show something explicitly and something can be shown implicitly.
There wasn't anything
that's how it
shown
works.
implicitly, though. That's the issue. There was nothing there.
I agree. There was nothing there. The Twitter files were just a complete joke entirely.
There was. I mean, if I went to Twitter and I said remove, 10 posts and none of them would be removed, and the government went and almost half of them did, I think that that's something there.
But the good faith question that I find nobody does here is what posts were removed and why.
The Hunter Biden laptop.
The Hunter Biden laptop story. Yeah, we did this.
Okay, yeah. The Hunter Biden laptop story was removed for a day for containing hacked materials. That was part of their terms of service. It is against the rules to post hacked materials. That applies to everybody. Everybody everywhere. That was not censorship. That was enforcement of their terms of service. If you don't like it, complain about their terms of service. I do that for YouTube all the time. And Twitch. I think their terms of service are sometimes really stupid. Why am I not being allowed to grab this Korok seed?
The Hunter Biden
The
laptop
Hunter Biden
story.
laptop, which I have right here as a hard drive.
The Hunter Biden laptop
No, he doesn't. I do not believe that for a second.
story was not removed at the behest of the government, though.
Yoel Roth stated.
Yoel Roth testified 3 times in Congress that
testimony
no
that
reference
he
ever
said,
was made to the Hunter Biden laptop.
I will read Destiny. I will read it
3
for you.
times
if
in
I
Congress.
You're
We
right.
can
Hunter
bring up
Biden's a
YouTube.
great guy.
I will read
Biden's
it
not
for
a
you
Chinese
if I have.
agent.
Dude, what is Alex Jones suddenly doing popping in out of nowhere? And yeah, actually, I think Hunter Biden is a great guy, to be perfectly honest with you. I think he's a perfectly fine person who's had his problems in his life and has come back from those problems. And I think he's been a victim of political attack by Republicans nonstop. And he's been used as a tool to attack people, or to attack Democrats by Russia, in my opinion.
So,
everything's fine.
Here we go.
Your destiny lies with me, Skywalker.
And it's no.
Okay, I don't get it. Why are people laughing at that?
It's very
Like
simple.
I'm back in 2016. We can scream if you want. You know, it's fun. That's all good.
It's very simple. I'll pull it up on Twitter.
Hey, I was just up there hanging out with your wife. She's a nice lady.
Jesus Christ. We're really what?
No, that was your wife.
Are we allowed to pull people up from the audience?
My
for this?
wife was hanging out with her, too. No, I mean,
Well, I was hanging out with her first.
that's right. Jack already hung out with him. And then I was there. That's always better, like, to be like
I
third or
appreciate
fourth.
you stalling while I could look this up.
No, seriously, your wife's a really nice lady.
Yeah, you know.
Okay, I don't think it was intended as an insult originally. I think he's just saying I was hanging out with your wife. She's really nice. And everybody assumed that Alex Jones is making fun of the dude's wife.
He talks about, this is the FEC statement that he made December of 2020 after being sued by the RNC.
Who are we talking about? I'm not sure.
And the RNC sued, and they said the takedown of this laptop, which I think, can we all at least agree that was censorship, right?
No, I don't think that was censorship. That was enforcement of their terms of service, actually, is what that was. If you don't like their terms of service, then lobby to change their terms of service. Again, I do this with YouTube all the time.
Of course.
Right?
It was
Censorship.
election.
Destiny should not be conceding this point. It was not censorship for Twitter to simply enforce their terms of service, no hacked materials. They've done this. I mean, Twitter's done this for others, too. It's not just the damn laptop, really.
Meddling.
That enabled an election interference, information that was prevented from being received by the American people.
That the
stories
FBI knew
about
was
this.
real.
So here's what Yoel Roth said. During weekly meetings with federal law enforcement agents,
Alex Jones says the FBI knows that the Hunter Biden laptop is real, and I just let that slip by because do I really want to, fight that battle? And the answer is no, I don't. But I don't believe that the Hunter Biden laptop's even real. I don't believe that it's real. I don't. I think it's fabricated because we've never seen it. If it did exist, if Rudy Giuliani, as he claims, really did have a clone of the hard drive, it would have been on the internet by now. There is no chance in hell that there would be a slow trickle like this. It would have been handed over in its full form. We would be able to clone it and open it up and look at the entire thing. But we can't do that. That's weird, right? It's just right now acting as a node of quote unquote information. We can't access that information ourselves, but that information is coming from this laptop supposedly. And somehow they keep generating brand new information that didn't come out 2 or 3 or 4 years ago or whenever it was that this laptop first surfaced. Why wouldn't Donald Trump or Rudy Giuliani or whoever has the laptop now, I have no clue, why wouldn't they have released all of it all at once in 2020? It's absurd to me that people actually buy this. I don't believe that it's real. I simply don't. He's buried with Jimmy Hoffa's remains inside the belly of the Loch Ness Monster, right? Absolutely absurd. I'm sorry, I just don't believe it's real. I don't. I think that it was a Russian disinformation campaign, and it worked gloriously.
He specifically mentions the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and industry peers. They communicated they expected hack and leak operations by state actors might occur in the period shortly before the 2020 presidential election, likely in October.
So Twitter took down the story for 1 day and then put the story back up after that 1 day. At the same time, Facebook took that story down because they believed that it was Russian disinformation, because it fit the pattern. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg, not famous for being a left-wing actor or whatever, specifically said that this perfectly matched up with the Russian disinformation patterns that they expected leading up to the 2020 election. Republicans would have wanted the same type of diligence in examining and considering leaks or whatever posts that might have been posted by state actors on the left as well. But when it's on the right, they absolutely lose their shit and pretend that they're being persecuted and that there's some kind of censorship happening. Like, give me a break.
I was told that the intelligence community is expected that the individuals associated with political campaigns would be subject to hacking and disseminated over social media platforms, including Twitter. And I also learned in these meetings that the rumors that a hack and leak operation would involve Hunter Biden. And then it just goes through and says there.
That's true. However, later on.
Dude, why are people yelling out in the audience? They should not be doing this because people can't understand a word they're saying who are sitting on the other end. Like, this is so annoying.
Hunter Biden. And then it just
listen again. See if we can understand.
Goes through and says there.
That's true. However,
something that they said it under oath?
Later on, under oath, he clarified that exact statement,
which is perjury, and he should go to jail for that.
That's not perjury.
That's perjury.
He gave that quote.
And these poor fools are just like clapping their hands raw. Just absurd.
Hey, America
no, I'm with you.
Okay. From my understanding, it wasn't perjury because he was clarifying his position. He didn't lie. He didn't even like twist the truth. It was just misinterpreted by other people. So he went under oath and clarified even more, I guess, is my assumption. Like, I'm not even fully familiar with the situation, truthfully.
Definitely perjured himself.
Everything's right. We didn't sell out to China. Everything's fine. We all.
Okay, I don't know what he's talking about. We sold out to China. Is there like any evidence of that at all? What's he even talking about?
We're all going to buy our electric vehicles from them and our solar panels. We've been screwed by the globalists in China.
Let him rebut. Let him rebut, please.
China.
Alex, calm down. China.
I mean, he's not giving anybody an opportunity to counter his claims. He's just yelling China over and over again like an idiot.
Calm down, Alex. Thank you for your vote.
I went to Xi Jinping. He gave me hundreds of billions of dollars.
Destiny has a rebuttal, please.
Later on, under oath, Yoel clarified that any references made to Hunter Biden were from other social media representatives. It did not come from the government. There was never.
Says right here that it came from.
There's audio recordings with Hunter going, I work with the head of Chinese intelligence, Dad. They arrested me. What are we going to do?
Okay, Alex Jones is just trying to be funny now, and it's not working. It's just being annoying. I don't even know what they're talking about, right? Like, what is he talking about? I can't even understand what he's saying because he's acting like an idiot. I'm sorry.
Bad Hunter Biden impersonation.
Okay.
He's got more soda in his voice.
Can't do Hunter Biden impersonation.
Hunter Biden laptop is not real, folks.
I don't see any crack pipe stains on your fingers. Now, I have a question, because I'm more of a novice with this stuff. You guys get deep in the weeds.
He says it straight up in this testimony.
When he clarifies 3 times under oath later on that the request did not come from the government. It did not. There was not a specific request from the government.
It says right
I understand
here.
you can read that one quote all you want. The 3
point
times
is,
later on,
again,
let him talk for a minute.
This
is the
argument
head
is
of Twitter.
beside
This
the
is
point.
the guy who censored the election.
Oh, they're talking about Jack Dorsey. Okay, I had no idea who they were talking about up until this moment. Jack Dorsey said something under oath, and I guess he had to clarify 3 times. Okay, interesting.
I think that
as a
quote's
legal
pretty
matter,
important.
this is beside the point. I mean, it doesn't matter. You don't have to say, if you don't do 1, 2, 3, and the government's going to punish you, and you have to show that direct threat in order to get government action. That's one way to do it, but you can also show it through coordinated action. And I think anyone looking at the whole gestalt obviously sees that's what's going on if you're fair with the evidence. And that is what a jury is going to determine in a few months in some of the law cases that have been brought against Twitter in the United States government.
I guess the question is, where is the retribution from the government?
I don't think there needs to be retribution. Honestly, I really don't.
Like implied or general or whatever. Like, what is it? Like, point.
There has to be the possibility of retribution, I suppose, but not actual retribution.
What would the retribution be for they committed the censorship? Why would they need to?
But they did it. They most
the
of the
FBI
time
called up and said, we want you to suppress this. The Russians created it. It may be fake. And they knew it was real 2 years before. Period. Case closed.
But
That's just a straight up lie. He's just lying here. That's not true.
administration.
Which actually,
That every
to Alex's
administration-
point, the FBI already had this, so they knew it was real.
You didn't.
What evidence do they have of that? What evidence do they have that the FBI had a copy of Hunter Biden's laptop leading up to whatever? That's just completely fabricated. They're making this up right off the top of their head. For the record, again, I said this before. I'm going to say it again. I don't believe that the Hunter Biden laptop is real. At best, I think that it would have been released already long ago if it were real. The whole thing in its entirety, a complete dump of the laptop would have been released, including its passwords and everything. I'm sure of it. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind. But they're using it as a slow trickle, and conveniently, only specific information is releasing. We're not getting irrelevant details that were on his laptop. If we had the entire clone, we would have irrelevant stuff that was pointless and meaningless, like pictures with his family or whatever. I don't know. For some reason, we're just getting like the pornographic ones of him. So that tells me one of two things. Either the laptop isn't real, and all of these things are the result of a hack, which is really, really likely. Either that, or B, the hack took place. They downloaded as much information as they could from his various accounts. They put it on a completely blank laptop, and they broke the laptop's screen or something, and brought it to a repairman. Looked for somebody who couldn't identify who brought the laptop in. Gave it to this repairman, who happened to be right-leaning, and then just didn't come back for it. That's my guess for what happened, honestly. I don't believe that this was Hunter Biden's laptop at all. It's Hunter Biden's data that's been stolen, in my opinion. And I feel that, these people have a burden of proof that they have to meet to show me that this is really Hunter Biden's laptop. They have not met it. They haven't even come close to meeting it. Until they show me that it's real and it's actually Hunter Biden's laptop, I'm simply not believing it. I'm not believing a word out of their mouths.
Now, if every single person in the FBI or the FBI guy coordinating with Twitter knew that they had that hard drive.
It's a pretty specific
the
request.
FBI liaison to Twitter said it's not real when they knew it was real.
They did not say that to Twitter.
Look,
they said, we believe this is Russian disinformation. You should suppress it.
Yeah, this came out in the Louisiana lawsuit when Elvis Chan was meeting. So Elvis Chan is the FBI agent meeting with Yoel Roth and others.
Dude, I don't even know what the hell they're going on about right now. Like, this is so in the weeds and confusing and ridiculous that, like, I'm just lost. What the hell are they even talking about right now?
Vijaya Gade at Twitter and others.
See, this is the problem. Like, this is not an issue. None of this stuff is a deal breaker. I don't give a shit about Hunter Biden. I care about Joe Biden and what he's up to. Why are we talking about Hunter Biden right now? What does he have to do with anything at all? He could have, murdered somebody, and it would be completely irrelevant. I don't care. Lock the dude up if he did something wrong and move on. What does he have to do with Joe Biden? Nothing. And these people are digging into this so deep that they, know the names of Twitter employees that were working certain cases at certain times and all this. Like, come on, people. Where is your head? How are you this out of it? That this is what you're focusing on, really? Insane.
They specifically talked about this Hunter Biden hack and leak operation as if it was fake information, yet he testified that he knew that the FBI at the time had recovered in 2019 the actual, and still, we presume, they still have custody of the actual.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, but I don't trust a word out of these people's mouths. Not one. If there was a laptop that was recovered by the FBI, actually, I'm convinced that it was simply filled with, information that would be damaging to him and nothing else. Otherwise, that stuff would have surfaced a long time ago.
Actual laptop that was left in Delaware.
And you know, what amazes me is the way the liberals have changed on this. I mean,
The liberals.
when I grew up, you know, no self-respecting Democrat or liberal would be comfortable if, you know, the CIA and, you know, they didn't have Homeland Security there, but wherever, government officials were sitting with the New York Times editorial board and telling them what stories to cover. No.
Yeah, I would have a problem with the CIA sitting with an editorial board and telling them which stories to cover. I would have a huge problem with that. Absolutely. 100%. When did that happen? What's he talking about?
Liberal. I grew up in a very liberal environment. They would be horrified.
Flip out.
They would flip out. Now, however, they're like, yeah, let's go do it. Oh, you know, simply because there wasn't a death threat from, you know, DNI or CISA.
But you did have
I have no idea what they're talking about right now. Like, this is just like a mind virus that exists on the right. It's just like infecting everybody. They're all wrapped up in this bizarre talking points coma that they can't escape from. It's insane.
administrations like Lyndon Johnson calling the Chicago Sun, etc., and telling them to hold on to stories.
Yeah, they did, and people criticized it. They thought it was wrong. And what has happened to the left?
Right?
Yeah, that would be wrong. Lyndon B. Johnson calling, who did he say, the Sun? Well, a newspaper anyway, and asking them to hold the story. Yeah, that would be wrong. Absolutely, I agree. That's not what's happening right now at all.
No one says it's wrong anymore. That's the problem.
Well, I mean,
That's wrong. See how simple that is? I lean to the left of hunting the homeless for sport, and I say that's wrong.
Every administration has done their best to try to manipulate the press to their ends.
Yes,
So
exactly.
my question is, it seems to me that this is an economy of influence. So if you have social media companies, just like if you have media companies in general, whoever's in power is going to do their best to get an angle and make sure that they're covered favorably versus unfavorably.
But they've got to.
Okay, now you're just speculating. Whoever is in power is going to try to get an edge to make sure that they're covered favorably. Why would he even say that? That's complete speculation. Did Donald Trump do that? Oh, absolutely. Oh, my God. And he used the government to try to enforce it through the threat of Section 230 being removed. Has Joe Biden done that? I've seen no evidence that Joe Biden has tried to, or any Democratic lawmaker that I know of, tried to force social media or news to cover them positively and threatened them with, you know, their power that they received as a result of being in government.
An angle of the 800-pound gorilla where they're dominating all the
How do you
discourse.
avoid that? We've never been able to avoid that. I'm wondering if you're going to have these private companies and they're going to sway one way or another, right? It seems to be that most of the young people at Google and these companies tend to lean, let's just say, left in general.
No, I completely disagree. The old Twitter system, the old Twitter, like, well, what do you call them? Like, the people who ran Twitter before, they didn't lean left. They leaned neither left nor right. They were simply trying to stop disinformation at best. I don't think that the Twitter people leaned either direction, honestly. I really don't. And I haven't seen any evidence otherwise.
Right? It's hard. It's very difficult to then change that with a law.
So
right?
just let the public
what would
see
you
it
say?
all.
Right. So
Let us decide.
Actually, there is a law.
Okay.
It was passed by the great.
Oh, interesting. He says, let the public see it all and let us decide. Well, that's literally exactly what Gavin Newsom passed, that bill. That's what they were complaining about earlier. He said they complained earlier about a law that Gavin Newsom passed that made it so that social media companies are legally required to be transparent about the hate speech policies that they have. If they have hate speech policies, then they must show those policies on their website, and they must show how they are enforced.
So you're telling me that if I go to New York or some state and I tweet out like a racial slur, I can actually get criminal action against me?
No, the way the statute worked is that it required the platforms to keep track of hate speech, whatever that means, didn't really define it, and create lists of people who are producing hateful speech and have that available and disclose it. So essentially it was sort of a forced auto-doxing by these platforms. And that's what the
nonsense. This did not happen.
Democrats do. And so, you can't sort of say, oh, the Democrats aren't going to hurt the social media companies. They do, and they have.
Governor Gavin Newsom today announced that he signed a first-of-its-kind social media transparency measure to protect Californians from hate and disinformation spread online. AB 587 by Assembly Member Jesse Gabriel will require social media companies to publicly post their policies regarding hate speech, disinformation, harassment, and extremism on their platforms and report data on their enforcement of the policies. Okay, great. I don't see a problem with that. Yes, YouTube was shadow banning people for the longest time because we didn't know what their policies were. Absolutely, I love it. Post it publicly. Tell us what is going on. It's just a bill designed to create more transparency about their hate speech, about their policies. It's not telling them that they must have this instituted or whatever. They must blah, blah, blah. It's saying they must have it listed on their website what their enforcement policies are. Very different. I'm sitting here listening to this. This is literally exactly what already exists in California that the right is screeching about at the moment. He says, let us decide. That's what is happening. Are you kidding?
State of Texas, thank you very much. HB 20, which prohibits viewpoint discrimination by the social media companies. So that means that they can't kick people off because you're Republican or you have political views that
That's fair.
Jack Dorsey.
I actually agree with that. I agree that there shouldn't be discrimination against somebody for political positions that they hold. However, being a Republican is not synonymous with believing that, like, I don't know, George Soros is like, I don't know, what would Alex Jones say about George Soros? George Soros is secretly a lizard person in human skin or something. Those things are not the same. You can be a Republican and not believe that. So kicking people off because they're spreading nonsensical, fear-mongering garbage about George Soros is not the same as just discriminating against somebody because they're a Republican. I simply reject the premise there.
And that's fair. Well, it's the same rule that applies to this comedy club.
Right.
Yeah, right. They can't kick you out because you're black or you're Jewish or you're gay. And the same way, social media companies shouldn't be able to kick you out because you're Republican.
I agree. Sure. That surprisingly, I actually agree with that. Not everybody does. Political affiliation is a protected class in Washington, D.C., and D.C. alone. And I actually think that it should be a protected class everywhere. You shouldn't be kicked out or hurt or whatever because you're a Democrat or because you're a Republican. Shouldn't be allowed to be fired from your job for liking Bernie Sanders. I agree. That's not what was happening at any point on Twitter. That's completely made up. I thought it was kind of interesting. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. It drives me nuts when people just blatantly lie and it goes completely unrebutted. So tell me your thoughts.